Welcome to another episode of No Ordinary Woman, where we recognise and celebrate women of all ages and all stages. I'm Fiona Briffa, and today I've got Kylie Brennan joining me. Hi, Kylie.
Hi, Fiona. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story to inspire and encourage other women. Kylie's story is based around losing her sister to cancer 4.5 years ago and what she has done since. And I'll just let Kylie explain it. But Kylie, just talk us through that moment around when you lost your sister, Karen.
She had a 2-year battle with cancer, Fiona, and in that 2 years, she was given a prognosis of only 5 months when she was first diagnosed. So it was very much a real situation the whole way through, and didn't take long for us to realise how special it was to be able to find gratitude and to really sink into what could be done with the situation. We both had young children at the time, and I remember one of the first hospital admissions, we sat there talking to each other and reading trashy magazines, and we were, oh my gosh, have we actually been alone together with a cup of tea since the kids were born? And it felt so huge and monumental to laugh about that and say, this is an opportunity for us. And it kind of was like that the whole way through. She's always been quite a philosophical person, so the way that this all was approached was quite, I guess, unique and open and gentle.
Yeah.
So we had almost an awakening type journey throughout the whole thing. And when she did pass away, we were expecting it. Yeah. And we were so grateful to have been able to get her home and care for her at home.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Yeah, and we were both each other's birth partners for our 2 children each. So we've done 4 births together, and it was just such a beautiful and privileged experience to almost recreate that experience and usher her home in that way. And you know, you have a lot of time to talk about this sort of thing and understand what their wants and needs are. So it was a journey to get her there. And then of course what comes after you probably don't necessarily anticipate.
Yeah.
And you take those learnings and that connection and that growth, I guess you'd call it growth, through those times, and find yourself on the other side of it and need to work out how to do that.
How to be yourself without your sister, because she was your twin sister as well, wasn't she?
Identical twin sister, and very much joined at the hip. If you could ask any of our friends, you would know.
Yeah.
You get one, you get the other.
Then you have to learn how to live without them and navigate those. And I know I've lost a sister as well, and it's like you don't know how to do life without them. And I know that it's odd how many people I know, like a lot of my very close friends who have lost siblings, and all have been through very different journeys around it. And I think that a really important message to any woman out there watching that has been through or going through something similar, or maybe in the future, is there's no playbook. Like, it is your own journey, and it's very different. And of course, loss is loss. But the way you process it, and like for you saying, Kylie, that your experience was with your sister was quite positive, and there was gratitude, and you were able to usher her out. Whereas for me, it was more abrupt. And then I just went to a very bad place a long time afterwards. And that's the sort of thing, is that just those different contrasts in how you navigate around those waters there's no rules around. So I just want to put that out there.
I so agree with you, Fiona. And, you know, early in the piece, I had a lot to do with an online grieving group for twins. And I very quickly realised that the way that I was doing this was more aligned to who Cassie and I are, rather than being this, what they're called, twinless twins.
Yeah.
And I describe it as it's like a fingerprint. My relationship to her is very different to the fingerprint of my sister or my brother or my parents.
Yep.
And, we all have our own depths of that relationship, which means our depths of grief are from a different map.
Yeah.
And for me to expect other people to understand my map and for me to assume to understand their map is missing the point of that imprint that she left with us. So for me, it was a really inward journey of connecting to what we would do together to navigate this. And I had a moment probably pretty early on where I had this realization, identical twins have a duality. We are represented in both of the twins. And it really feels like when your twin dies, it feels like half of you's gone.
Yeah.
Like half went with her.
Yeah.
And to the point where I had to make sure that during the moment of her cremation, there was butterflies released and things like that, because I just couldn't concept,
Yeah.
And I had this realization that if half of me has gone and I feel deeply connected to her, what if the roles were reversed and I was observing her go through that pain? And I realized, she doesn't want to be stuck somewhere watching me suffer.
Yeah.
So it helped me to realize, okay, if that half of me has transitioned, half of her has stayed.
Yeah.
And so now it's a real I actually call it because the books that she wrote, they were kind of not finished. So I finished her third book and then the fourth, and I call it a posthumous collaboration, which is what I feel like my life is now.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much.
Yeah.
Is that, if you are a duality and half of her has gone there, and that means half of her stayed. So she's still whole and you're still whole in a sense.
Absolutely.
And what a beautiful way to look at it, because I know we try to bring meaning to a lot of stuff, but I think that's not just making meaning. That's actually, that feels right. And for me, I think of my sister as not actually gone. She's in heaven, right? And this is where I want to talk to you about your sister's book. And so it's just that, like, we're not in the same country as each other at the moment, and we don't have any communication, but she still exists and I still exist. Yeah. And we'll exist together again in the future. And I'm just going to put it out there, because I came across another lady who lost her sister after I did, and just helping her. She was going through her own grief. And I said to her, here's something that helped me. I'm not in any way going to try and say this will help you or whatever, because you're going through your own thing. But what helped me was to focus on, while I was grieving, was to focus on the fact that I had 34 years of an amazing experience with an amazing best friend, and that some people never get that. And so I just really held that. And she said, she gave me feedback later and said that actually helped her just to comfort her through the grief, because we're not trying to take away the grief, because that's unhealthy, but to comfort her, to give her comfort through the grief, is to remember some people don't ever have that kind of relationship in their whole life. And I got to get 34 years of it. So I've
had such similar thoughts, Fiona, and to be privileged enough to even have that extra layer of being somebody's twin. Yeah. It's just such people have always been very fascinated by our relationship, and we've always known and had that feedback about how rare and unique and freaky by nature that it is, and felt so grateful to have been gifted a person to share with. And, she was 37 at diagnosis, 39 when she passed. So to have that for 39 years, and I still feel deeply, deeply connected to her. Yeah. So, the hardest days are always the days where something's blocking that connection. Right. And I saw it with the Facebook page Humans of New York. I once saw this beautiful story about a woman, a widow, and I can't remember the exact quote, but she talked about, before her husband passed away, she said, "How do I cope without you?" And he said, "Take the love you have for me and give it to the world."
Oh,
Isn't it magic?
yep.
And so
Wow.
that to me is, for me, grief is this dark, empty space next to you where they used to fill.
Yeah.
So it's, it's a physical space. It's a time throughout your day connecting to them space. It's the space that they fill up spiritually, emotionally. And when that's empty, it's almost like you're putting all of this lost, wasted effort, love, energy into. And it's just a matter of reframing that space.
Yeah.
So for me, her empty space has got lots of different things now, and the book is one of them.
Can you tell us about that book? You finished writing it, which is a legacy to her, and it's to help children form a loving connection to heaven. Can you tell us a bit about the book?
So there's 4 books in the series. The first book she wrote and completed, and it's to her little boys, Hank and Billy. Yep. And it's essentially the mothering that she wanted to do for them in explaining cancer, explaining death, and also supporting them when she couldn't. Wow. So, when your kids go through big stuff, every mum wants to be the one. Even despite the dad, we want to be the one to console them, to comfort them, to shield them. And she wanted to find a way to still be able to do that.
Yes,
So defying the odds of cancer was obviously the first plan, but having her words and her connection and her love, she was able to tell them the story of the book. She was able to have the discussion about palliation using the same language, and we now use that dialogue with our family when we're talking to the boys. And so this story is written directly to them and also teaches them and other grieving children how to reconcile where they've gone and connect to their whatever it is in your household that you believe, their legacy, their spirit, their memories, their learnings that she taught you before she passed, and to continue that connection.
That is beautiful.
It's so beautiful. And just watching the boys now referring to it and talking about it. And, when we have conversations about, have you felt mummy around lately? And they both have their different experiences and they both have their different little signs and prompts.
Yeah, beautiful.
But there's nothing preventing them from believing in that connection.
Yeah, wow. That sounds like a good book, not just for kids that have lost a parent, but just to teach kids about loss of anyone, because they all lose grandparents at some stage or another.
Absolutely.
But, to cover, just to help them understand and to be able to process in their own way. What an amazing, beautiful, healthy tool that is for children, because I don't think I've ever heard of anything, I guess, because I've never looked for anything like that, but that seems like a beautiful legacy for her to not just leave for her children, but for children for future. And so I just want to go into, you've made a mission out of this and just fulfilling her legacy and finishing these children's books. How do you find the balance between making sure Kylie is doing Kylie as well as fulfilling Karen's legacy? And are they different, or is Kylie's purpose? Tell me how that is for you.
Some days it does feel very busy, but the more time that goes on, the more our legacy blends into the same.
Yeah, right.
The work that I do as a coach has got like a different mission.
Yeah. Okay.
But essentially, for both of us, I want to reach as many people and make this more gentle for people. And, as a coach, my mission is to help people discover their absolute capacity. Yeah. And for Karen, my mission is to keep her alive and to keep her legacy here. But further than that, it's to help other mums, give other mums that gift that Karen gave herself and her boys.
Yeah.
And a interesting side effect, I guess you'd call it, is a couple of years ago, actually, Billy, the youngest, I came to a Mother's Day morning tea at his school, and he was so beautiful. He said, "We're reading Mummy's book today." And I thought, oh my gosh, am I ready to read this out loud yet?
Oh, wow,
and,
yeah.
The teacher and I both read little pieces from it. And what I didn't expect was so many parents come to me afterwards and say, "Thank you so much. You now have taught us how we can speak to Billy about this,
Wow.
how we can support Billy." Because kids and grief, I know when I was a child, we had a lot of death in our family around a few years, and it wasn't the done thing to attend funerals. It wasn't the done thing to involve kids in grief. No, so our generation has not been taught how to gently guide children through grief. It's more a case of don't say anything to upset the children.
Yeah, and then just try and because I think there's that legacy of put a smile on your face, stiff upper lip. We've kind of robbed ourselves from like generations of actually feeling our feelings, and we've been through all this during COVID and lockdown has been really highlighted to, you know what, if you feel like it sucks right now, it's okay to be sucky and sad. Yes. Don't try and go, we can get through this, you know, soldier on, because soldiering on really compresses and stifles our emotions. And I look, you know, when my sister passed, I couldn't deal with it myself. I didn't take my kids to the funeral, and I regret that every day now, because I didn't allow them to have that, and because I didn't know how. I didn't know what to do, and I didn't have the emotional capacity to be able to deal with their grief. But I realized that because I was so caught up in my own, that I didn't know how to comfort. Like I forgot that, you know, my niece had lost her mother, my mother had lost her daughter. It was just all about how I felt, and looking back, I feel like that was really selfish, but that's all I had at the time.
That is grief, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
it
narrows your focus.
Yeah, and you know, in those first few months, it just became so clear to me that when we go down that rabbit hole per se, and we follow that emptiness and follow that grief of our own experience, we lose the opportunity to understand why that feeling's coming up. And so I started to teach myself, if I was really overcome, what is this feeling? You know, the first birthday without her was our 40th. So we were in Hawaii doing the trip that Karen and I planned for our 40th.
Oh, wow.
So it felt quite removed. But the second birthday was so tough. And it took hours for me to understand that I needed to go searching for what I was feeling.
Yeah.
And I realized I was completely blocking a connection to her that day, a celebration of us that day. And it was so profound when you allow yourself to feel the feelings, and when you allow yourself, you know, on the funeral.
Yeah.
It's such a huge day. I forgot to feed my children.
Yeah.
A friend gave them food in the middle of at the start of the funeral, because I had completely forgotten. And we learn and we grow with every experience, and it's never too late to check in with, what is this feeling? You know, if I feel disconnected from my family because I'm having a different experience, what is mine?
Yeah. And I think another important thing is to not feel guilty on top of grief, because as I was saying that, it's like it's not helpful to us to feel guilty about what we did or didn't do when we could or couldn't do it, because it was, we're always at any stage, whether it's in grief or just throughout our whole life, the ups and downs of life in general, it's important to know we're doing the best we can with what we've got to work with at the time. And feeling guilty about what we did or didn't do adds no value. It really takes away value to our lives. So I think through this process of grieving, to manage our expectation of ourselves and others around us, but again, we don't have the cognitive strength to even do that at the time, but I guess in hindsight. So do you find, do you allow yourself now to both celebrate your birthday as well as be sad that your sister's not there, like that? How hard is that?
Great question. It's getting different is probably the word that I would say. The first few years, I would not even answer my phone to immediate family. It was just too much.
Yeah.
And I was actually thrown a surprise birthday party by my husband upon returning from Hawaii, and there were a bunch of friends, and I realized on that day the song Happy Birthday is never going to have the same ring to it.
Yeah.
So my little nephew and I were hugging as they were singing it, and you know, it's just different. You learn to appreciate all the birthdays that we had, and I learned to remember that it's her birthday. It's still her birthday, and we're still twins. And it's like her legacy. It's finding that balance between honoring and acknowledging and appreciating what feelings do come up, because you know, it's not the life that I planned. It's certainly not the life she planned. And her boys always FaceTime when they're doing a little cake for her after dinner, and you find these new beautiful little ways of marking the day rather than what you would have hoped in the past.
And that takes time, you know. That's just something that you have to learn, isn't it? It's like the 5 stages of grief we know about, but just being able to allow yourself to celebrate and allow that for yourself while you allow yourself to feel sad about this as well is a very hard, I won't even say balance, but harmony to find between the two.
And I've found a nice little routine.
Sometimes they'll go like this, I bet.
Absolutely. Every year I sit and do sunrise at Cronulla, usually on my own. Lockdown this year, I did laps of the local AFL Oval. But that's my time to connect to her and to have that space to let the feelings come up that are coming up and to explore what's underneath. And 9 times out of 10, when I go exploring and I open up my space to that, either I'll get a beautiful sign from her, like often 2 birds will fly at the same time together, or sunflowers is something that's a daily occurrence for me, which is my little sign from her. And the first year that I really sank into that ritual, just as I found peace, you wouldn't believe it. I had a friend send me a song on Spotify that was about sunflowers, and the images started coming through. So it's really, it's not about going searching for symbols. It's letting go of the stuff that's in the way of me appreciating that space.
That's a really great point. It's not about going searching, but just for opening up space for it to come to you.
And you know, people have varying opinions on what a sign is. And I've addressed this in my writing before, you know, whether it's the subconscious mind, whether it's some sort of religious, spiritual connection, or whether it's my imagination, I just think to be able to access something that gives you such beautiful reframe of your feelings or your mindset, or an appreciation, and to ease the suffering of grief. It doesn't matter where it comes from, it doesn't matter what its origins are, it's how you accept that and how you carry that with you,
bringing yourself comfort in the discomfort. And it's about that is finding that harmony and that balance so that we don't get swallowed up by it. Look, this is your story is beautiful. I love that you have made it your mission to fulfill your sister's unfulfilled dreams, which I think is absolutely gorgeous in her books. To be able to still continue to find that balance with yourself. I think for anybody else out there watching who's lost someone, whether it's a sibling or a close friend or another family member, is to let it be your own journey and to feel the feelings you need to feel. But still, sometimes we need to be a little bit more intentional about how we try to bring something to comfort us in the presence of our grief as well, and not get swallowed up by the grief. And that can be really hard to do. But I think we need to be more cognitively and consciously aware of bringing that into our space as well. And I just want to go back to Kylie's mention of filling that empty space with sharing the love to someone else. And I really love that. Yeah, I'm just sitting there. My brain is just like hugging me at the moment, just with all sorts of lovely comfort. That's a really beautiful way to look at it all. I can't wait to go back and watch this video. And Kylie, I want to make sure I'm sort of just giving you a shout out as well as for everyone watching, I will leave the links to Kylie's business and her coaching business if you would like to learn more about Kylie and her socials, but also to your sister's books. Is that a separate thing, or is that all available through your?
I can share the separate links. At the moment, they're not in the same space.
Yep.
And
so I can put those links in the description of this video as well. So if you're interested, which I like, how would we not be interested in buying those books, not just to because they're a great resource, but to support Kylie and her sister and Kylie's sister's kids and everything in the future. I think that will be a beautiful way to support this whole cause as well, by purchasing and then sharing that with friends. Sorry?
Yeah, hopefully soon we'll have the other 3 books in the series. But book 1 is My Mummy Lives in My Heart, and that's available.
Oh, and when those other books are available, you let me know and I'll share it on my socials so that everyone watching can follow and will know when they're available as well. But I thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Kylie. Thank you for having me. I've loved this. I've simply loved it. Same. It's been a beautiful share, and I hope you've enjoyed watching at home. I really hope that you have found something out of this that has inspired or encouraged you, or just given you some sort of comfort or hope or strategy around processing for yourself, or maybe a friend that you know that's going through loss at the moment, and to leave it on the note that focus on the time that we've had with that person to help bring comfort in our grief, and to make sure we allow all those emotions to be friends with each other. Yeah. I think that's a really good way to think of that and end this. But yeah, thank you so much, Kylie, and thank you everyone for watching, and I look forward to joining you all and bringing you another No Ordinary Woman for our next episode. But bye for now. Bye, Kylie.